And then you can sashay over next to Rod, and then you can move up.
Merrill Bismarck, 4 Hickory Hill Road. Can you give us more information on this?
Sure, I can give you, I don't know, I can give you some generals. If you remember back, and Mr. Willer can fill you in the details, but where the old Hillsborough landfill used to be on Sunnymead Road, that was closed, it was auctioned off back in 2000, was it 5-ish?
It's actually before my time, but what happened was we have an old landfill off of Sunnymead Road. Way back when the Township Committee did solicit proposals for the closure of that landfill, if anybody was interested in acquiring the property and closing the landfill and redeveloping the property. In response to that, we received, I believe it was 3 submissions. The most favorable submission was from Sunnymead Ventures, who Sunnymead Ventures agreed that they would close the landfill at their cost and expense, which was estimated to be about $1 million. And at that point in time, they would put, maybe a Class B recycling facility at the property. That's what was the discussions at the time. That actually has been around for quite a period of time, but the reason it didn't come to fruition is because the DEP was looking for an active remediation, a methane gas remediation system at the property, and that wasn't something that was anticipated by Sunnymead Ventures because a active system is much more costly than a passive methane gas venting system. So therefore, the township ended up installing a methane passive system. It's been monitored throughout the years. The DEP has now indicated that they are satisfied with the results and that an active system doesn't seem to be necessary for the property. I know Sunnymead Ventures also added on to that passive system at their sole cost and expense at the property, and it has hired an LSRP, and they've been doing monitoring at the property. So now that the DEP has indicated that the active system doesn't seem to be necessary, we're looking to finally close this transaction. When we close this transaction, what will happen is we will then deed the property over to Sunnymead Ventures, and they will be responsible for closing the landfill in accordance with all NJDEP requirements at their sole cost and expense. The reason there is some consideration that they're going to pay the township is because the original agreement was that they would install the methane system, but we did at our cost and expense, so they're going to have to reimburse us for that amount.
But the land also has residual value besides that, right? Because it can be redeveloped?
They're going to be limited in what they can do because it's a former landfill, but they still have to clean it up and close it, which is estimated about $1 million.
Okay, and they're covering all that cost?
Yes, that's why. Yeah, they were the most favorable. When the township originally went out to bid, there was people who wanted the township to pay money to them. They would take the land, but they wanted the township to pay them money.
So is that going to be reflected in the bill of sale, or is it going to be a zero bill of sale? Because the amount's not on here.
Okay, and matter of fact, I have closing documents right here. It's $375. It's reflected in the developer's agreement, $375. In other words, we're getting reimbursed for our cost that, like I said, when they originally contemplated with, they were gonna take the property, they were gonna assume all the costs, but we incurred some costs in installing the methane gas system, so therefore we felt it was only fair that we get reimbursed for that.
So essentially, the land was given away at the cost of them absorbing all the remediation costs.
Exactly.
So, we don't get any dollars. We get rid of the land off our regs. They do all the remediation at their expense. They're reimbursing us the monies that we spent to put the passive system in. At time of closing, the $375,000, whatever the number is, we'll be reimbursed over that period.
So the redevelopment agreement, which we also don't have, which is specified here, does that go through these costs or the fact that this has been remediated, or is there some redevelopment? We have redevelopment agreements when we go to affordable housing. Is there something in
So
there?
they need to go to the planning board eventually.
Yeah.
And be designated the redeveloper, and then they would have to then come in front of the planning board and put whatever plan they decide to build at the planning board.
So the area, the township has, way back then, when this
Designated.
originally was done in 2005 or whatever, the township went through the process. It is declared an area in need of redevelopment, but there's no redevelopment plan yet for the property. We do have a redevelopment agreement with them that this is going to authorize the mayor to execute. And it basically says, as part of the redevelopment agreement, number one, they're responsible, obviously, to close the landfill at their sole cost and expense and meet all the environmental requirements. And then thereafter, they originally talked about a Class B recycling facility. It seems like now they're leaning more towards solar, putting solar on the property. So we'll see what comes to fruition, but right now, it seems like they're more interested in putting solar on the property.
So on September 25th of 2007, the Township Committee adopted a resolution designating this proper area of need development. So in September 25th of 2007 was when it was done by the Township Committee. And then in 2009, it's been sitting, basically waiting to have all the improvements done and get, as Mr. Willard said, have all the agreements from the DEP, which now has taken us 13 years or so to get through that. And now they are ready, we've gotten the green light from the DEP, and we're ready to proceed with the agreement that was done back then.
And in response to your specific question, housing is not contemplated on this site. I don't know if it,
No, I wasn't
yeah.
suggesting that.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's the only time I've seen the
Yeah.
term area needing redevelopment. The redevelopments proposed is with that, is with that ordinance or with that contract.
I would admit this is a little backwards. Usually you have, the plan for the property in place, but they have to clean it up first. They have to clean it up first. And again, their interest to us, they expressed, they seem to be moving towards solar.
That makes it valuable for them. Okay, was Sunnymead Ventures called Sunnymead Ventures in 2007?
Yes. Sunnymead Ventures LLC.
Because when I look it up, it says it was formed in 2022. I'm just, in Wikipedia.
I can't answer that, but they've always put it in the name of Sunnymead Ventures. I'm thinking back and looking at the documents. No,
Yeah, as far as back I can remember too, it's been a
the
long
letter
time.
of intent, I think, said Sunnymead Ventures.
So if there is no price specified, or we're selling it for $0, or we're selling it for $3.75, is that part of this ordinance? Is that what you're going
No,
on?
the agreement was already done back in 2007, what the whole land was sold for, and the agreement is just, we finally have gotten to the point from the DEP to move forward and then transfer the property. That all was done back in the original bid, as Mr. Willard said, back in 2007, when the Township Committee adopted the
Correct, right. The only difference is if we did it back then, we wouldn't have been getting any compensation, but we
Right.
are now getting compensation because we did put money into the property, which they should have put that in, not us. So we're getting that money back.
Okay, but it's also, whatever, 17 years later, so.
Yeah.
later on.
Well, DEP moves slow.
It was contemplating solar in 2007,
Like I said, his originally plan for the property was to put a Class B recycling facility there. Now he's more interested in solar.
okay. All right, I'll let questions. Thank you.
So, essentially, we've now got rid of a potentially contaminated piece of property, and the township has absolved itself of any fiscal responsibility of it, and I think that's a win for the township. You were closer. She's a little further away. Yeah. That was the battery.
Sensitive, we need to put something over that.
Rotate
not?
it.
It's green.
There you go. You're live, young lady.
Okay. Auctioned in 2005 to Sunnymead Ventures LLC or to someone else?
It wasn't auctioned.
It wasn't
was
auctioned,
bid.
it was put up, the township solicited statements of interest. So basically saying, hey, we got this piece of property, advertised it to the public, is anybody interested in taking this property off the hands of the township, cleaning it up, and what would be your plans after you close the landfill? What would be your plans for development of the property? That's what the statement of interest that the township solicited back in 2007, 5, around that area.
Okay, I'm sure I must have written about it at the time. Sunnymead Ventures LLC, I also was looking around for them. Who are the principals in that? I can't find any information on them. And apparently, they didn't have experience in cleanups because they had a little problem coming up with exactly the prices and what had to be done.
Joseph Horner is the individual specifically with that venture.
Ah, okay. The uses are limited, so I know you said they have to go to what, the planning board? If they finally come up with, we want to put in a solar farm or a recycling center. So whatever use they come up with would have to be an approved use, or would have to go through the planning board?
Lost Mike, but essentially, whether it's, they still need to come as a redeveloper in front of the planning board to present the plan for the approval of the planning board, and then it would move forward, just like any other project.
And not only that, it would have to, there'd have to be a redevelopment agreement. I'm not, sorry, a redevelopment plan for the property first.
Okay, it's on the rolls right now as owned by the township, therefore zero taxes. Any idea what taxes would at this point come in on that, or we won't know until we transfer that?
I don't know what the assessor's going to assess the property at, but it is still a landfill, so I imagine until it's cleaned up, probably not much, because it's a former landfill.
Now it's around 400,000 assessment, but with zero taxes paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, it will go on the tax rolls. Once it is transferred ownership, it does go on the tax rolls.
Thank you. Anyone else? Judy?
Video's good, or?
Judy Haas, Title Support. Forgive me if I repeat questions, but I couldn't hear a thing anybody said. By the way, it's a problem that a lot of people have in this room.
We're going to try a new mic with,
Thank you.
Oop.
Okay, I thought perhaps Susan asked the question about the fact that there's no residual land value besides the reimbursement of the costs that you put in for the passive methane system. I mean, it's
What do you
10
mean?
acres.
Correct.
Okay, and what is the zone that it's in?
It's now in a designated redevelopment zone. So the redevelopment plan hasn't been adopted yet for the property.
Okay, well, here's where my head's going at. Right next door, you have the North Great Dane.
Northeast Great
trucking
Dane.
Station. You've got 1 million truck bodies on that property right next door. Could that use be moved over to the next property?
no, because it's not, first of all, they'd have to get in front of the planning board for that use, and it's not, I don't believe, is a use that would be designated for that zone right now, so to answer your immediate question, that would be no. They could come in and visit, they could try and ask if they wanted to have the zone redone. It's possible, but they couldn't just do it themselves.
Okay, but you have the use right next door.
Yeah, so it's a light industrial use, it's kind of that whole zone is a light industrial zone, but I don't think that, right now, that's not really what the purpose of what this ordinance is. This ordinance basically is to rid us or transfer us of this property to someone who's willing to absorb all the future costs of cleaning up, and at that point, then he could come back to us with a plan that we would need to approve.
Okay,
Yes.
I understand that, but what I don't understand is there a value in what they still have to do?
There's
Like,
a
how
cost
much
of,
work
there's a
is
cost
still
of what they still
necessary?
have to do.
Or are they
It's-
just capping it?
It has been capped already. It's been capped and there's.
Well, no, they have to.
Well, they have to- well,
They have to bring in
passive-
soil.
yeah.
There's work that they got to do.
There's some cap that was done, but.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of work and a lot of cost, so the value of the land, let's say if you said it was 10 acres, right? Raw land has an estimated value of, let's say, $60,000 an acre in a commercial zone. So that's $600,000 if you were to go buy that land. they're anticipated to spend maybe $1 million to clean it up. I think they're underwater on what they're, if you want to look at it in the math.
Remember, it's also a landfill.
Right.
So
You can't put anything.
It was a landfill.
That-
How many years ago?
Doesn't
did
matter.
it stop
You
being a
you
landfill?
can't put anything really heavy on it
So
because it'll sink.
What do you think you could put on it? I mean, there's
Right.
garbage buried down there.
I don't know, but
Okay.
So
we
we're-
have landfills elsewhere in town as well, and who knows
And do we
what's
have any
getting
buildings
built
on 'em?
those.
It's very difficult to build anything of structure on a landfill because the subsoil is not something that is hard and reliable.
But you could park trucks, empty trucks,
Maybe.
possibly.
Maybe.
Maybe that's what they'll use it for.
Okay, I just want to understand what the range of possibilities could be for what's going to turn up there.
There's really, you have to wait and see. You're kind of a little ahead of the game. Because right now
Again,
it's all about
the only thing I
transferring
could
the
tell you
property.
is that he's interested in solar right now. I don't know if that's ever going to come to fruition, but we'll find out.
Just
The
build a
first,
solar farm?
the first thing he's got to do, though, is close up the landfill.
I'm sorry.
I said the first thing he's got to do is close up the landfill.
Okay.
But yes, he's indicated that he wants to put solar there. We'll see if that comes to fruition. I guess if it does come to fruition, that'd be a good use
And was
for the
that part of
township.
the proposal from God knows when, 2007?
No, actually, back then, he was talking about a Class B recycling facility.
Okay.
So I think this solar facility, if it comes to fruition, will be good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Maria Janusik. So I have questions on the ordinance, kind of paragraph by paragraph. The Township of Hillsborough is the owner of the property identified as Sunnymead Road, Block 182, Lot 7.02, consisting of approximately 10.71 acres. When did Hillsborough acquire this property?
I don't know, that was a long time ago. It was a landfill back in 50s, 60s. I mean, way before we were born, at least before I was born. Yeah, I mean, it was still operating. I used to go there as a kid and dump on dump day back through the 60s and 70s, so long time ago.
So that was always owned by Hillsborough? Or did Hillsborough acquire that from someone?
I don't know. As long as I can remember, we've had it.
Okay. So in 2007, that was already owned, obviously then, as you're saying, it was already owned by Hillsborough?
Yeah, it was actually, the dump was closed prior to that,
Okay.
the landfill, I should say.
Why has it taken so long to do anything with this if there
I
had
think
been some
that
kind of
question
an
was
agreement?
answered. If you listen, it was all
I know
based
it's
on.
hard- the microphone's
So I'm
not
going to tell you,
working.
so it's all waiting for the EPA to give them the green light that the passive system would be okay. So it's all been waiting for approval from the DEP and the EPA. That's why it's been taking so long.
So was something submitted back in 2007 to the Department of Environmental Protection, to the EPA, that would be
DEP,
The
basically.
New Jersey's?
Yes,
or
it's not the
federal?
federal, it's the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection.
The New Jersey Department of
Yeah,
Environmental Protection.
and what they wanted was an active methane gas system. And we kept on telling them that we didn't believe that was necessary for this particular property, that the cost, well, obviously is substantial, and that it wasn't necessary for this property. And finally, we did install a passive system, and when the DEP kept on getting back the gas monitoring results, they finally agreed, after all these years, that, okay, it looks like the passive system will be acceptable.
So that's the only thing that had been done was a passive system?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And monitoring, yes.
And so when was that done? And what year was that done?
I don't have the exact year, but it would have been sometime after 2009. I don't know the exact year when that was done.
All right, because it says here, September 2009, the township publicly solicited the statements of interest for the closure.
Correct,
that
so
was
it would have been
2009.
definitely after that date,
Okay,
but I don't know when.
so according to this, in response to the publicly solicited statement, Sunnymead Ventures offered to assume responsibility for closure and monitoring. So then, in consideration for the township transferring title to the property to Sunnymead Ventures. So what happened at that point? Is there any kind of agreement still with, since they felt it was, what was the reason why they didn't do it? Was it too expensive for them?
Again, that was the issue over whether the venting system that the DEP would approve would be a passive or an active system.
And Sunnymead Ventures still continued with this project?
Yes, they did. They continued to show their interest, and as I indicated earlier, and it's reflected in this document here, they actually installed some of the passive venting system on their own, and they incurred some expenses to do that. They also hired an LSRP, and they've also been doing gas monitoring at the property.
So what is actually, you're saying that there's something in writing between Hillsborough and Sunnymead Ventures in regard to the work, it says here, they installed a passive,
No,
they
the township installed the passive.
Complements to the passive.
Correct,
So
they
what
added
kind of-
on to it.
What kind of complements were those?
I believe all it did was some additional piping that expanded the system that the township installed. Again, that was required by the DEP.
And so there are documents stating all of this, that they had installed things complementary to what the township was doing?
I don't know what kind of documents there are regarding that, or if there are any, but I know they did it.
They've been basically working with the DEP the entire time, as we are, and they're aware of everything, and that's what finally allowed us, after their review of all the work that's been done and the monitoring that's been done for the last 15 years, to give us the ability to transfer the property.
Okay, but what?
That's the bottom line.
Okay, but what I'm asking is if there are documents, township documents that document all of this, that's throughout all these years.
What
Sunnymead
documents are you
Ventures,
looking,
Sunnymead
what particular
Ventures-
documents are you looking for that
Okay,
say what?
Are there documents showing that the township installed this passive methane mitigation system? Are there documents?
There would have been.
Yeah, because we have to show it to the DEP.
Yeah, the township went out to bid for that work, and so there'd be documents regarding that, sure, that the township did, yeah.
Okay. Now, are there also documents stating that Sunnymead Ventures installed complements to this passive methane mitigation system?
I don't know if there's any actual documents regarding that.
Because it's kind of strange that a company would drag on something like this all these years and do all this, not knowing what the end result was going to be. There should be they should have something.
You're correct, it was a risk to them when they started putting in their own funds.
Which in turn is why we were happy to get it transferred, otherwise we'd be incurring these costs and all this ability. So this essentially takes all the responsibility out of the taxpayers of Hillsborough to remediate and clean up this site, which I think is a win, and I don't know why it appears to be such a problem for you to ask these questions. I think it would be something, if we didn't do it, I think you'd be up here asking the same questions, why we didn't do something about getting rid of this property or transferring this property.
Okay. I don't feel it's a problem.
Okay. And
And
it's all going to be governed by the LSRP, which I'm sure you know who they are from coming to the planning board meetings. because-
Licensed site remediation, yes.
And the site remediation and the DEP. It's all being done through them. We basically are just transferring title to them, and the rest of it is up to them through the rest, till they can do whatever they choose to do it, once they get approval. That's bottom line.
Does the township have records from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection in regard to all of the work that has been done? This passive methane mitigation system, when it was installed, and what the results are
I would
from that?
imagine we have, because we had to pay a contractor to put it in, so I'm sure there's documents of some sort back in 2009 or whatever, again,
Okay.
way before my time, that dictates where everything is, how it's, and then also the monitoring that is being done, because we have to have it monitored, so all that is, I'm sure, available. I'm not sure if it's through engineering or who, Anthony, that might have that information.
Yeah, we can try to come up with some of the information, but as the mayor stated, and as Attorney Willard, we've been working on this. I personally been working on this myself, it seems, for 20 years. So I'm very happy that we're finally getting rid of this garbage dump and giving it to someone who wants to spend a lot of money the town doesn't need to spend. But as the attorney mentioned, we could see what documents are back and forth, But the DEP's been looking at this, and I've been in Trenton myself through the years, trying to get this done the right way and to transfer it appropriately, and that's where we are today. So if there's documents to be had that we can share, we'll do that. But I can assure you that personally, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, trying to transfer this property. And I'm happy. This is one of my top 10 things I wanted to do before I'm dead. So that's another one out of there, along with
gonna
the
raise the
206,
flag like
along
the
with the
Ranger one?
206 bypass
I wonder-
and some sidewalks in towns. This is my top 10. So the cupola is number 11, where she just left out. The cupola was number 11. She just left.
Okay, so is there some kind of agreement between the township and Sunnymead Ventures initially in regards
Yeah,
to this?
as the Attorney Willer
It
said, there
was-
was an agreement.
There was just initially, there was just a letter of intent.
Right.
Only letter of intent, nothing further after
Correct.
that?
Correct.
Okay, and so you say that you have documentation between Hillsborough and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection in regard to the, what was done
Passive
by
system.
Hillsborough? You have
Well,
that?
well, hold on,
We-
I don't know what documents we have from the NJDEP, but I'm sure we have documents regarding the installation of the passive venting system.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be with a vendor?
I'm assuming we had a vendor. I don't know if we did it or
Unfortunately, I
whatever.
can't remember what I had for breakfast today, but I'm pretty sure, that, we went out to bid and we got a price, so there'd be documents, there'd be bid documents, and
Yeah,
from
anything-
the
anything
vendor. I
like-
don't know who did the work, though.
Yeah,
I don't
anything
remember.
from that would be an engineering for that, because I know Mr. Bellinger's been working on that even longer than I have.
But the township would initially have something with Sunnymead Ventures before anything went further to engineering? Something saying?
Right,
that
that's what,
that
he said,
they
that we had the letter of intent.
Just a letter of intent, nothing further?
Yeah, in response to the township's request for statements of interest, we have their letter of intent. Yes.
Only a letter, only
Yes,
only
ma'am.
a letter of intent?
No, yes, correct, not a formal contract, their letter of intent, what they were agreeing to
And
do.
based on that, this Sunnymead Ventures went ahead and did all of this and did a complimentary installation of something in addition to what the township did?
Yes, ma'am.
Based only on that letter of intent?
Yes.
Okay. And so there was to be no exchange of money for this property at that time?
Correct.
Okay. And now it says here, so now you have an agreement, a redevelopment agreement already with Sunnymead Ventures?
That's what's being approved hopefully being approved this evening for authorizing the mayor to execute such agreement with Sunnymead Ventures. That agreement will then finally allow us to transfer the property to Sunnymead Ventures, and that agreement again requires them to close this landfill in accordance with all NJDEP requirements and assume all the costs associated therewith, including the ongoing methane gas monitoring requirements that the NJDEP will have. They got to continue to do all that work. And then hopefully we will then come up with a redevelopment plan for this particular property.
So this, when the township installed the passive methane mitigation system, in what year? 2009?
No, it was definitely after 2009. I don't know when it was, but it was, I don't know when it was, but I do believe, Anthony, it was during my tenure as township attorney. So it had to be sometime after 2015. I would think it have to be after 2015.
I would-
Somewhere around there,
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
yeah.
And
Because
so-
again, the DEP was honest that something's got to be done.
Right.
So in all those years, this passive methane mitigation system still hasn't cleaned up the issue, the contamination?
No. I'm not a scientist. You call it contamination, but the way I understand it is that these landfills, what they do is as they decompose, they create methane gas, and therefore the methane gas needs to be vented. So that's what's going on there, and that continues to happen as the things disintegrate under the ground and they decompose, whatever. It continues to create methane gas, and that's why you have these requirements that it has to be continually monitored, and they have to make sure it's not migrating off the property and so forth.
And so, as of now, this methane gas is still continuing to come up from under the ground?
Yes,
Okay.
that's how I understand it, yes.
So then, at some point, was anything said that this passive system was not working or doing the job, if it took so long for this to get cleared up, and it's still not cleared up?
I think just the opposite. I think Attorney Willard said that it met the criteria of the DEP, and that's why it's able to be passed through. So we addressed that a couple of times today, that the DEP approved the passive system when initially they didn't approve it. So that's why it took so long. That's part of the approval process, but that's been said several times tonight.
Okay, but what's being said is that Sunnymead Ventures is going to have to spend around $1 million. What do they have to spend it for? Other
They
than
gotta,
this methane
they
gas,
still have
what
to
are
cap
they
this,
doing?
they have to cap it, they have to do the further improvements and monitoring and everything else that goes along with getting the property suitable to build on. Right now, no improvements have been done to this property other than the installation of the passive system. That is all.
And right now.
Which they're paying us for.
They have an LSRP that they hire, and they pay that LSRP for all the compliance and all the monitoring. This is going to be continued to monitor over the years. It doesn't just go away.
So then, can they do anything on it until the time when finally, because you're saying the DEP approved what's going on now, but you're saying now that they're going to have to do a lot more work.
The only
so it's
thing
very
the only thing
confusing.
they approved, Maria, you're going in circles. It's not that complicated.
Okay.
The only thing they approved was the passive system that is being done now. They don't have to do an active system. That is the only thing that DEP has approved to this point. So at that point, that because of that issuance, the LLC has agreed to move forward with taking possession of the property, which we are trying to do now. And then from this point on, anything that should happen, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, is on his dime. That's all it is.
Okay, so they-
Pretty straightforward.
So they won't be able to do anything until the DEP tells them
Till
that
the
that there's no
DEP and
longer an issue with the methane
The
gas?
DEP and the LSRP sign off on the property. And then, at that point, they need to come back in front of us at the planning board, which then you can be there.
Okay. Now, would this landfill be considered a grandfathered landfill? Because I think at some point, there were new regulations by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection in regard to how you would close a landfill. So is this under the new regulations or under the old regulations that it doesn't
That's
meet?
not my decision, that's DEP, and I don't know the answer to that.
So does anybody know?
No, I don't even know what you're talking about, being a grandfather landfill. But again, it's
Because-
not an area of my
Again,
expertise
not in our control.
about what it takes to close the landfill.
Okay, because yeah, I mean, if it can just be capped right away, then it's a
That's a question for the DEP,
big
why don't you
win
call
for
them?
these people here. So how much, what is it gonna be, the Hillsborough's getting how much for this?
We're getting the money that we spent to do the system back, which is roughly about $350,000.
Yes.
$350,000.
$350,000. Okay, and is there a copy of this? Because I would have thought that we
We
would get
haven't done the
we were
execution
gonna
of the
get a-
agreement yet, because that's what we're trying to get done.
Oh, okay, all right, so you're not showing this agreement until after you approve it and it's signed, then it'll be available to the public?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. One more question, Ms. Bree? Sure, Merrill.
Okay, I think this is an easy question, too.
Name,
Is-
please.
Merrill Bisberg, 4 Hickory Hill Road. Is the redevelopment agreement going to specify, I believe with redevelopment, you can have a tax abatement or a pilot or some kind of tax relief. Since this is going to be an area of redevelopment, are we committing to full taxation, or is there going to possibly be something in there for an abatement?
Okay. So it could be, because it's a redevelopment area, so it would legally be allowed to, but no such determination has been made at this point in time, because first of all, they'd have to qualify under the long-term exemption law. They'd have to form an urban renewal entity, and they'd have to meet all the requirements of being an urban renewal entity. And right now, they're not an urban renewal entity. So that'd be something for a future day, but I don't know. But it's a property that would qualify.
Okay. I guess if they're spending all this money and relieving us of all this cost, there's got to be some silver lining for them. And,
Well, sure,
you
anyone
know,
that goes into a development feels like there's possibility for profit, which is what the basis of land development is.
Yeah.
So if we had owned that property and just sold it to them on open bid for $600,000, and they went and built XYZ there, that's land development. What we were facing is a land that was contaminated with the burden of cleanup possibly placed on the taxpayers and the residents of Hillsborough, which could go into the millions of dollars and never have someone to develop it. So this alleviates the cost and the worry of having to spend money to clean up the property, which essentially, and if the guy has the ability to make a few bucks at the other end, thank you very much.
okay, well, if it's going to be profitable, I hope that full taxation is considered.
I would, we'll get, yep. Anyone else? All right. We have a motion and a second. May I have a motion to close public hearing and adopt ordinance 2023-11?
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Committeeman Rue,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Britting,
Yes.
Mayor LaPlante.
Yes. And Anthony, you can take it off your list. You've gone down to just a cupola, and we'll move from there. We'll move now to public comments that are not on today's agenda. Ms. Brake, please read the statement regarding public comment.
The Township Committee welcomes input from the public. Please state your name and address, and please spell your name for the record. You will be given 1 3-minute allotment for your comments. Please understand that this public forum is not structured as a question and answer session. Comments are to be addressed to the mayor. Again, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Anyone on the left? Because I know there's nothing on the right.
Well played, Mr. Mayor.
Maria
That's exactly
Jennison.
what it is.
Maria
Okay.
Jennison.
It's obvious.
All right.
I have a question. Why was this public hearing for this ordinance set for 5 o'clock instead of normally, as it's normally done at 7:30 at a regular meeting?
Well, that's part of today's agenda, but basically because it was such a short deal and we had to have public here and employees here, we felt it would just have it at 5 o'clock. That would make it easier for all those involved because it wasn't going to be a long meeting. There was no proclamations, there was no other things, and quite honestly, a lot of other municipalities have meetings at like 5 or 6 o'clock. We just tend to make it later to allow people to get here out of work for all the proclamations and such, so.
Okay, because I
That's
think
why.
that is an issue, that at 5 o'clock, people are heading home from work, so a lot of people wouldn't have been, who may have been here, couldn't make it because of the time, the 5 o'clock. Also, I have at times requested government records through the Open Public Records Act, OPRA, and then when I get a record, like I had requested a copy of the resolution that designated the Sunnymead landfill as an area in need of redevelopment. And what I got is not signed by the,
So
doesn't have the
this is
signature.
public comment that's not on today's agenda, Ms.
Yes.
Branch? And this was on today's agenda, so this is not the time to bring that up. But
What-
if there's
what
an
I'm-
issue
what
with
I-
any of the Oprah records, I'm sure you could talk to Ms. Brake now and resolve it.
No, what I want to say is when I get, not just this, when I get records, a lot of times the signature of the registered municipal clerk isn't on there, even though it's from a few years back or whatever. Once it had been approved by the township committee, that should be a record that is signed by the township official, and I get records that are not signed. That's my complaint. Not just this, but it's happened quite a few times before.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. May I motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Committeeman Rue,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Britting.
Yes.
Mayor LaPlante.
Yes, we are adjourned, and our next meeting is July 18th, right?
Yes.
July 18th at normal time. Have a wonderful 4th of July. We are adjourned.